Hi, gang. Today we're going to begin to shift um, our discussion a little bit and change directions just a little bit. Um, we talked about um, issues of death and dying. And part of that, I ask you um, to make your own kind of decision about who you would think, uh, how you would define person or personhood. Um, and so, as we go through this, I want you to continue to keep that in mind. I didn't give you an exact definition, but I ask you to define it for yourself. But one of the things that I thought would be helpful was for me to discuss with you a little bit about the Hippocratic Oath. So we often hear that doctors take an oath. Um, actually, that's not entirely true today. Only about 50% of doctors actually take the Hippocratic Oath. And it's more whether it's a tradition in one's particular medical school to take the Hippocratic Oath or not. Um, and so I thought I would just share with you exactly what the Hippocratic Oath is. I'll give you a copy of it, but I do want to put it up here on the screen so that you can see it here. Um, so you're looking here at the Hippocratic Oath. I swear by Apollo, physician, and Asclepius, and Hygeia and Panacea and all the gods and goddesses, making them my witness that I will fulfill according to my ability and judgment this oath and this covenant. To hold him who has taught me this art as equal to my parents and to live my life in partnership with him. And if he is in need of money, to give him a share of mine, so on and so forth. I will apply dialectic measures for the benefit of the sick according to my ability and judgment. I will neither give a deadly drug to anybody if asked for it, nor will I make a suggestion to this effect. Similarly, I will not give a woman an abortive remedy. In purity and holiness, I will guard my life and my art. I will not use the knife, not even on sufferers from stone, but will withdraw in favor of such men as are engaged in this work. Whatever house I may visit, I will come for the benefit of the sick, remain free of all intentional injustice, of all mischief, and in particular of sexual relations with both female and male persons, be they free or slave. What I may see or hear in the course of the treatment or even outside of the treatment in regard to the life of men, which on no account must be spread abroad, I will keep to myself. If I fulfill this oath and do not violate it, may it be granted for me to enjoy life and art, being honored with fame among all men for all time to come. If I transgress it and swear falsely, may the opposite of all this be my lot. Um, as you read this, you begin to see that on the one hand, part of it just isn't relevant. On the other hand, there are some questionable parts of it. And we just finished a section talking about physician aid in dying. And so this section here, where it talks about um, giving a drug or making a suggestion about a drug, obviously makes that part difficult. Where we're headed with this next section is with regard to this statement here, where it says, Um, Similarly, um, I will not give a woman an abortive remedy. Um, so there um, you see that in the Hippocratic Oath, uh, it is to swear to not give an abortion. But I would just call your attention to a couple of other things. The idea that there's payment for services with sex, um, with a slave or a free person, and to not use the knife, which would make it difficult, of course, to um, uh, to be a surgeon. Uh, and then let's go back to this part, that the one who teaches you will be equal partner, and if he's in need of money, I'll share mine, and regard his offspring as equal to my brothers and sisters in lineage. And when you begin to read the Hippocratic Oath, you begin to see that there's a lot in here that's just not relevant today. In fact, it even becomes problematic in context. So there are various versions of the modern Hippocratic Oath. I'm not going into that in this in this uh, in this course, but I did want you just to understand that yes, there is something called the Hippocratic Oath. Yes, there was a time in ancient Greece where physicians would have taken that oath, but only about 50% of physicians take any such oath today to abide by it. So, as I was saying a moment ago, as we dive into this, remember that I had asked you earlier in this section on assisted dying and such, what the definition of human was, and how you decided who would be a human. In your mind, what is a human? Now, I don't know exactly what you put in your definition. I think you shared that, but that's not the important point. The point is that you made that determination. Now, as we get into this section, talking, because we're eventually going to get to abortion, I want you to keep that in mind. Okay? But before we get there, let's begin to talk about some of the science that goes into the biology of being a person. And let's take it down to a minuscule level. Let's talk about genetics. Now, I'm sure at some point in school you studied a little bit at least about genetics. One of the first people that we really discuss in our, in kind of our first course in biology, especially talking about genetics, is probably Gregory Mendel. He was a monk, and he is the one who began to map out dominant and recessive traits. He was able to work with, I think, peas, and then eventually with animals to develop certain traits that he would want to see both in plants and in animals. I guess interesting work if you can get it. Sometimes they would show you a chart, A, B, A, B, and then it was A, B, A. I forget exactly how the chart was, but you probably remember that, to determine which genetic traits would, or am I showing my age? Which genetic traits would be dominant, which would be recessive, which you would have a likelihood of being dominant, which you would like, you would have a chance of being recessive. In my case, I have two recessive traits. You can't tell it as much in the video, but I have sort of red strawberry blonde hair, and my eyes are green. Also very pale, but I don't know that that's genetic. Well, it is genetic, I guess, because you trace my lineage back. I am mostly Scottish. Irish on one side, but I'm not Scotch-Irish. Both my families, on my maternal side, can trace all the way back to Ireland, and then on my father's side can trace all the way back to Scotland. Scotch-Irish is a particular type of people that settled in the Appalachian region. I'm not actually technically Scotch-Irish. My great-grandfather came here from Ireland, and my paternal grandparents go back with an unbroken lineage back to Scotland. In fact, there's still gun clans in Scotland, and so I come by my genetic makeup, honestly, in that sense. But the recessive part is the hair color and the eyes, and of course the fair skin. But the hair and the eyes are recessive traits. If you stood me next to my brother, you would think we're not related at all. I still wonder about that sometimes. I think I'm the adopted one, but we don't know. I don't know anyway. So when we think about those things and put it in the context of our genetic makeup, what are we actually talking about? Let me give you a little bit more history before I define some terms. In the early 90s, it became the goal of many scientists to map the human genome. So they wanted to map every gene in the human body. And the idea was that this was going to take us 20 years to do. In fact, I remember at the beginning of I think it was at the beginning of Bill Clinton's presidency, he announced this ambitious task to trace every gene in the human body. And there was so much promise in this, all the things that we were going to be able to do if we only mapped the genome, the human genome. Well, it turns out it didn't take 20 years. And as it turns out, in spite of the fact that we can map human genetics, we can't necessarily do a whole lot with that just in and of itself. We have to know other things. Like now we know we have to know epigenetics, and environmental factors play a part in how people's lives unfold. Well, so to continue on in the 90s, in 1997, scientists announced that they had cloned a sheep. The sheep's name was Dolly, and Dolly was a genetic replica or a copy of her mother. And so this was announced with much fanfare and, of course, lots of trepidation. What would this mean if we now can clone mammals? Well, of course, we know now it's really nothing much. People clone their pets now, provided they have the money to have it done. Was it Bette Midler who had her dog cloned? And there are other stories like that of people who have had their pets cloned because they just couldn't bear to live without their pets. And so to preserve the genetic material and to have another one. Of course, this whole idea of what we could do with genes, of course, gave rise to movies one series of movies that became prominent, of course, was the Jurassic Park series, and what we might be able to do if we could find dinosaur genetic material and somehow replicate that and put it into some reptile species and eventually grow. Of course, now we know that scientists are trying to grow a woolly mammoth and all of those sorts of things, because the promise that they felt, and they continue to feel, that is held within that genetic material. Well, a little bit more history for you. Before September 11th, 2001, I know some of you were born around that time. Well, let me tell you what the big discussion was. The big social discussion. I had just started teaching around that time, teaching ethics and such. And one of the big discussions in the ethical world at that time was whether or not the government was going to fund, the federal government was going to fund embryonic stem cell research. Scientists said that there's so much promise in this these stem cells, and so it was a huge anticipation about how George W. Bush would decide and whether or not he would give federal funding to be able to continue stem cell research. And I think the decision came out something like existing lines we'll continue to use, but will not create any more. The whole problem was that these stem cells had come from aborted fetuses. And many people thought that to use those was just immoral and wrong. Now you don't hear anything about it because science has found other ways to find that genetic material that they need, that basically, if you will, the construction material that they need to do genetic research. And now we know that they can extract your own cells and take those cells and do things with them that can help you. And they can extract them from other people and use them in that way. Well, where we see this, where all this talk about genetics comes down to, and where it works into our everyday lives, and why it is a current moral and social issue, is number one, for treatments, T-cell therapies, excuse me, those sorts of things. So the type of genetic treatments that we can give people to treat their diseases nowadays. But it comes down in other ways too. GMOs, genetically modified organisms. We see that mostly in food. If you look at a package nowadays, you might even see, I've got a package of something. Some of these left over from a well, I'm looking to see. Oh, let's see, all right, one more. Let me look here. Oh, I was looking for something that you might see on food packaging that says no GMOs, genetically modified organisms. You'll see it in the produce section. GMO as opposed to organic, as if GMO can't be organic. But some people just refuse to eat GMO food. And they question, should it be labeled? Should GMOs be labeled? so that you know you're buying them, which is why some companies, even some produce, some farms will label their food whether or not it is GMOs. This is an issue largely for Americans. It's not an issue for many other parts of the world. I think because here in the States, we have such an abundance of food. We can be picky about organic, GMO, or just your plain old it's grown in some large field somewhere. We can be picky about it. In parts of Europe, Asia, Africa, they don't give a damn whether it's GMO. That's not a question that they really ask. It's not something that they really make an issue of. But in the United States, it's what we would call a luxury problem, that we have that debate about genetically modified food. And so that's a question that you should ask yourself. If I ate genetically modified food, would it do something? Would it change me in some way? Am I eating something that is not healthy or not helpful? But we see it in other ways. We see it in other ways where it touches our lives too. If you've done an ancestry test, remember I was saying just a moment ago that I'm Scottish and Irish. I did a few years ago, I got as a Christmas gift, I got a 23andMe test. And I did it, I'd spit in a tube a whole lot, I had to spit a lot. And when it was filled up, I sealed it in the tube, in an envelope, and I put it in the mail. And I got an email telling me about my genetic ancestry. And it said, much to my surprise, that I am from Northwestern Europe. As if I didn't know that. I know that, my paternal side, I go back even to the Vikings as they invaded England. And as I said, probably on my maternal side as well, because of the Irish ancestry that I have there. But I did that. You might have done one of those too. You might have given, those as a gift to someone. So that genetic information then becomes something that we want to know about. We want to see, we want to understand. So yes, but then there are other ways. There are other ways that this whole idea of genetics interfaces with our lives. You might know of Angelina Jolie. And I don't know if you know this, but several years back, she had a radical mastectomy. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, she had both of her natural breasts removed. So she had a radical mastectomy, or double mastectomy, where she had both of her breasts removed. And of course, they were able to reconstruct and rebuild the material, the matter there, so that her body did not look disformed or misshapen or anything like that. And it was quite a discussion piece that she had done this in the news for a few days. But the reason she had done this dramatic thing was because she had a genetic test that proved that she had the BRCA1 or BRCA2 gene. Either one of those, the BRCA1, BRCA2 gene, can lead to breast cancer in women. In fact, genetically, it's almost a certainty that you're going to have breast cancer at some point in your life. And so Angelina Jolie thought, this is more of a risk than I want to take. I want my career. I have my children. I have my family. I don't want to deal with this. And so she had her breasts removed. Now, aside from all the questions that we might have about that, do we know that just because you have a mastectomy that you'll never have any issue with anything like that? I don't know that science has made that determination. All we do know is that she lowered her risk of breast cancer by removing the material in which those genes were likely to create a problem for her. But let's not stop there. So these are some ways that we know that genetic engineering is in our lives with GMO foods, with ancestry, tracing one's ancestry, with things like determining if you have a genetic trait for a particular disease. We know that genetic engineering can be used to treat certain types of disease, but let's begin to speculate. This is what makes it fun to do a current moral and social issues class. Let's begin to speculate. What if the tube that I spit all that into, and sent it off to 23andMe, what if my insurance company found out about that and they got the results of that? And they got in touch with me and they told me, I'm sorry, we can't insure you anymore because you have a genetic predisposition to diabetes, because both of my grandfathers did have diabetes. So what if they told me that? And so then I would be left without insurance. Well, what if they looked at my genetic material and they said, you know what, you're doing well now. Yeah, you're healthy. You're in good shape right now. However, we see that you have the gene for Huntington's disease. And so by the time you hit 50, you're going to deteriorate rapidly. Or we see that you have the gene that causes Alzheimer's, and so you're going to develop early onset Alzheimer's, and there's nothing we can do about it. Or what if I know that I have a recessive gene for something similar, let's say similar to African Americans who carry the recessive trait of sickle cell anemia, that if they marry another person with sickle cell, even though it's a recessive trait in them and a recessive trait in their partner, if they have a child, that child is going to have sickle cell disease and is going to struggle with it their entire life, which can be painful at times, developing treatments for it. So what if I learn I have these recessive genes? What do I do with them? What do I do with that information then? What will my insurance company do with that information if they got it? What if, here I'm going to draw on the movie Gattaca. I encourage you to watch it if you've never seen it. It's kind of an old sci-fi movie, Gattaca, Gattaca, I believe the name of it. It's the way it's spelled. I actually had friends who worked on that movie back in the day. But Gattaca, so going to use a theme from that movie. What if we're able to genetically engineer certain people to be perfect, especially for certain jobs? So the families that can afford to have their child genetically engineered, they come out looking physically perfect, having nothing wrong with them genetically. We know that they're going to live to be 200 outside of the chance of some accident or something, but they will genetically be perfect. We've taken out any chance they have of diabetes, obesity. We've taken out any chance of Alzheimer's or any other type of dementia or mental illness, or we even found a way to take out the chances of alcoholism or drug addiction. All of that, we've taken the genes out. And so this person is physically, genetically perfect. What about people who aren't? Then is procreation, is it only allowed between the genetically perfect people and between the genetically imperfect people? or can they intermarry maybe after they can no longer reproduce? Would they even want to at that point? So these questions about genetics, these what is involved with genetic engineering is something that we continue to struggle with, and we will as a human race. In fact, I would dare say this is probably one of the frontiers of medicine and one of the frontiers for ethical and moral um, um, uh, discussion. And so let me give you some terms so that you can use these terms. And then I have a chart that I want to show you as well that I put together. So the first term is gene. Now you probably know what a gene is. It is a unit of the genetic code. And the genetic code is what makes us, what determines who we are and how we are to some great extent. So gene is a unit of the genetic code. The human genome is a complete set of human DNA. A complete set of human DNA. Gene therapy is a technique to change a person's genes to prevent or treat disease. So gene therapy, a technique to change a person's genes to prevent or treat disease. Gene enhancement is genetic intervention to make people or animals better than what they would normally be. So that's genetic enhancement, to make them better than they would ordinarily be. Genetic engineering is the genetic intervention to enhance traits. So genetic engineering is the genetic intervention to enhance traits. And then finally, clone. Clone is the genetically identical copy of an existing biological entity. And let me give you one more, and it's abbreviated as ART, A-R-T, ART. That stands for Assisted Reproductive Technologies, or technology, assisted reproductive technology. And this is where it might be in vitro, it might be manipulating the sperm and egg in some way, but assisted reproductive technology. Now let me pull up a chart here that I want to share with you so that I can illustrate a little bit about what we're able to do with gene therapy. There we go. Now I will post this for you as well. Now this is my own kind of contraption to put this together. I didn't say that I'm coming up with this information, but you know, I haven't seen this chart really reproduced anywhere, so I wanted to offer it to you to look at. Give me just a moment, just looking at my notes here. Okay, so this chart You can see here 4 quadrants, one, and I've numbered them 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the one here where it says somatic, somatic refers to the body as in an individual. Um, so, so this is an individual body. Germline, however, refers to genetic material that can be passed from parent to child. So whereas this is something that happens to you, this is something that happens that would change, for example, the material that's in your sperm or egg. Sorry if that's a little crass, but that's basically what we're talking about. So that when you procreate, when you reproduce another human, whatever has been changed here will be passed along. Now here, so all of this we're talking about here is genetic engineering. I called it genetic alteration, but we're talking about genetic engineering. And this comes into 2 categories. Number 1 is to cure and prevent disease. So to cure or prevent a disease. The other is to enhance and either an individual or the human race. So it's an enhancement. So it makes someone better than they would ordinarily and normally be. Now, the way to read this chart then is to look at this quadrant as the individual, cure and prevention. These are cancer cures and procedures performed at the genetic level on individuals. So this is, I believe, T-cell therapy and other type of therapies where they use your own genetic material or some other type of genetic material, and the only person that is affected by that, as far as the only thing that's changed genetically, is you, your individual body. So soma, somatic here. So you're the only one changed by this. And generally this is done to cure, I don't even know if they can prevent diseases by doing this yet, but I certainly know that they can, they can cure people of diseases by using this. So this is the area where we are currently, we know the science, and this is where science is currently working right now. Many of the cures that they're working on for cancer come in this category. The thing I was talking about with Angelina Jolie, that was, done on her individually, so to determine her genetic makeup, so that she could determine a course of action. So this is all about the individual person. This is about you. Now, if we look at cure and prevention and we take it over to the germ line, so this is, we're going to do something to your egg or sperm now, or some other way, that you're going to pass it on to your offspring. So for example, we want to, let's just say we want to prevent Tay-Sachs disease, or we want to prevent diabetes in people. So if we perfect that, then what we would do is we would introduce that genetic alteration, that genetic enhancement into the population, so that eventually whatever is done could alter the future of the human race. Now here, we're doing an absolute good thing if we're trying to cure someone's cancer. an individual's cancer. Here, we have to ask the question, are we doing a good thing? We're eradicating a disease from all of humanity. Is this good? Will there be people in the future with this disease? Now we could talk, about traits in plants and animals as well, but let's just put it in terms of humanity. Would it be right? Would it be good to completely do away, for example, with Down syndrome? Would it be right to completely prevent any future cancer? Would it be right to prevent any future diabetes? Would it be a good thing to do that? This is what we're talking about here, because this has the potential to change the human race, the genetic makeup of the human race. At this point, we don't know the consequences of doing that. So now let's go into category 3. So this is more of an ethical certainty. We know what's happening here. Here, we've not gone there so far. Let's take it even a step further. Not only are we going to change an individual, we're going to enhance them. So not only we're going to make them better than they were born to be. So you were born, let's just say your eyes were born to deteriorate, or no, that's let's just put it in something very superficial. Your facial feature. You want to change your nose, but you don't want to have surgery. Would there be a way here to enhance some biological function or appearance to your nose? Or could we enhance your strength or your speed so that you're a better athlete? So at this point, we're not dealing with any disease that you might have. We're taking you as a person and we're making you better, genetically speaking. We haven't gone here into area 3 as far as we know either. No scientist has gone here. And then what if a scientist not only went there, but also went here and said, not only do I want to make this person faster, stronger, more handsome, I want to make the whole human race faster, stronger, more handsome. Conceivably, one would eradicate diseases even as they enhanced the functioning and appearance of the person. They don't necessarily have to, but that's potentially something that could happen. Is this making sense to you? I hope so. To the best of my knowledge, only type 1 here, genetic enhancement, genetic alteration has ever happened. Genetic engineering has happened. And it's been done to treat diseases in specific individuals. Type 2 here, cure and prevent, if you did it, introduce into the germline of the human species, could eradicate diseases such as diabetes, cancer, things like that. Type 3 could potentially make the appearance or the functioning of an individual better. So we could have super athletes Whereas here, could change humanity. A combination of 2 and 4 could create a superhuman race where there is no disease and perfect features and strength. This is precisely what Hitler attempted to do with his eugenics programs. That's another word I think I should probably define for you. Eugenics means good genes. He wanted to both eradicate weakness and create humans with exceptional strength and beauty, his Aryan race. So all of this is to help you understand genetic engineering. Would a person cease to be human if we altered their genome? Would they not be who we know them to be if we did those sorts of things to them? All right, gang. So I'm going to wrap it up here. Let me look at the syllabus first to see. So today is the 28th. Your reflection paper is, you have a reflection paper due today. Last week, you should have sent me your paper topic. If you have not gotten me your final paper topic, please get that to me. We're now over halfway through the semester, and so please do get that information to me so that I can grade it and get it back to you. I'm doing my best to turn your papers around as quickly as I can. So today, reflection paper 4 is due. And last week, you should have given me your final paper topic. Your reflection paper counts as a grade. Your final paper topic just counts as complete or incomplete. Okay, guys, thanks so much. Have a good day.